Welcome to the Black Panther Wakanda Forever ETTO spoiler cast. I'm Will.
I'm Josh.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Ben.
We're going to be talking about this movie in full spoilers. If you haven't seen the film, you're like 30 entries too late, so I don't know why you're listening to this podcast without the knowledge. But it kicks off with kind of the MCU's version of the passing of T'Challa and the passing of Chadwick Boseman. And it is quite intense and maybe a little sad that, for me at least, that they never really delved deep. Maybe don't need to delve deep, but delve into what caused his death. For me, it would have been not nice, but like good to have had a name drop of cancer. Much like the real life Chadwick Boseman, it felt like we were seconds away from actually an idea that was more impactful. Like it felt fictional and like unexplained in a way that kind of lessened what it could have meant for the character and for just people watching the movie, which was a little unfortunate. Ben, you were, I think, on the same kind of train with that.
Yeah. I was just, when he passed away and stuff, I was always like, man, I just hope he passed away from cancer in the film. I hope they don't shy away from that and just like flat out say it. Because like, to me, that is the most powerful thing, where the idea that even being a superhero can't prevent you from cancer, which doesn't have, like, you can't really prevent it, you can't cure it. And that, to me, like, off the top was like something that I definitely thought would be good. The one thing I have heard since the film is an actual cancer survivor saying that they were kind of glad they didn't mention it, because it kind of functions as it's a mystery disease, but it's kind of what's your like mystery disease? What's your beast that you have to fight? So by not naming it, they're kind of allowing people to put themselves a bit more in the shoes of all these people. Nice. But yeah, it's a little, I still think like out and out naming it would have had a level of power that this didn't, but then I kind of get the other perspective of it.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
It's because it almost goes the route of like slightly bad writing in just in it being a bit funky, of just like the thing that killed him. It's like, that feels weird to hear.
If it was real life, it would be like, he died from cancer. Yeah.
I think we also discussed the other idea that they just did a cancer story with Jane Foster in the previous movie. So it's like, one person actually had it and died of it, and one of it was just like a fictional idea.
It's like, hard to do that back to back.
How do we do this again? But one of them was a lot more serious than the other.
Totally. And I think that's a lot of this film suffers from being a movie that needed to happen in a way it happened because of a real life event. Like a lot of the problems with it, and it's funny funny is not the word, that it opens with the T'Challa stuff, because I think that is emblematic of all the little quirks that the film kind of struggles with. I think that it's got real high highs, but its lows are very evident from just the pieces that they need to put into place to set up what they actually need to do from now. And it's weird that this film came out now, because so many of the movies have been pushed, that it's odd that they needed this one to come out before everything. It's clear that the Wakanda wars and stuff like that is kind of what's being pushed with Vibranium, stuff like that they needed this movie to come out. And it's sad that it needed to. I don't know. It feels like, for me, very good, but very messy for the things that it needs to do. Less so the story it wants to tell, I guess. Sam, how'd you feel?
Like overall, I would say it's definitely like my favorite Marvel movie of the year, and like that isn't very
it's
high
the bar is low.
But no, like I actually did enjoy it. I found probably within the first half an hour, I was getting very much similar vibe, just like the overall tone similar to The Winter Soldier, which I really liked. Just having a really like real world issue happening.
Yeah.
And not so
boat.
much it being based on like things happening in outer space and superpowers and aliens and blah, blah, blah. I think it was really grounded in that sense. In terms of the runtime, I didn't mind it. There was a portion towards the middle where I was like, oh shit, I wonder when this is ending. But like, I think the biggest thing to take away is that there was just like a lot going on. Like, we're introduced to a lot of new people, especially people that we will be seeing in the future of this franchise. I mean, I'll wait until we get into it to say things, but like overall, I thought it was fine. Like, I don't really have any like massive complaints about it. I thought it did its job as a movie.
That's a good point. That surprisingly, this is the one that pushes the MCU forward. When there's like Multiverse of Madness, which you would expect would be like a big bomb in the MCU. Nothing. It's like every other movie has kind of been treading water. But yeah, that's a fair point that this is the first one that has felt like it's pushing the MCU forward a bit. Ben?
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not going to rehash too much of what you said, but I think the film's a victim of circumstance, and that is inescapable.
Yeah.
And almost, in my head, like, clears up a lot of what I think is wrong with this film, because I don't think it can be criticized too much for a lot of it, because it feels like a lot of it had to happen and happen in the way that it did. It is very... You're right in that the stuff that is the most disjointed from this film is the stuff that is attributed to the wider MCU. And it definitely feels like when any of that stuff is happening in the film, it is like you're watching a different film. Like the other film is people literally like dealing with their own personal trauma, like the actors themselves, not even the characters, and like dealing with how to come to terms with grief.
And then it's like wacky adventures in America. It's like, all right.
All of a sudden you're with Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Martin Freeman talking about how they were once married, and it's like,
Okay. I have never, like, I don't think there's any other character in the MCU that has, like, confused me as much as Julia Louis. Like, I don't think I like her. Like, I don't think I like her as a character. Every time she turns up, I'm like, oh, why are you here?
It's a bit jarring, eh?
Yeah. Like, she just doesn't feel, like, which is weird because there's so many big names in it, but every time she turns up, I'm just like, you don't belong here. Like, there's something about the way the character functions that it's grating whenever she pops up in a production.
I think my theory is that it's because William Hurt was quite ill, and they needed someone to replace his role in these in-between films.
Yeah, before they could hire Harrison Ford.
They didn't have, like, another option for it at the time. And so, because I look at all her roles and I'm like, that's 100% something Thunderbolt Ross could be doing.
Totally.
Like, he could have been elevated to the leader of the CIA and stuff. That makes total sense.
And they could have been married because they both have the same last name. So
that's true.
Yeah.
BTN. The two Rosses.
That's not what I was going to say with that one, but yeah. But yeah, no, totally. I think that's
for sure.
The weirdness with it all. I think she's doing the best job she can. Like, she's a great actress, but yeah, it does feel weird that this person with no background that we barely known is all of a sudden like the leader of the CIA.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, I don't know. The one thing I do want to shout out, obviously, setting up some wider MCU stuff, like, maybe falls a bit flat, even if it's still going to matter going forward.
Yeah.
But I have to shout out everything to do with Namor and the what's the name of
Telecon?
Telecon?
Yeah.
I didn't want to say Atlantis.
Yeah.
But I want to shout out everything there, because I think that was, to me, the highlight of the film. And it's interesting because, like, they're kind of mashed into the film, and it feels like it's their origin story. It feels like it's their Black Panther, but they're not the titular character of the film.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think they have the most fascinating arc of anyone outside of the people who are grieving in the film, and I think the way they've redone the character of Namor and kind of like brought him into the 21st century is really interesting, and actually having him have a foundation in like Central American and South American myth, but then also having it tie into stuff like the Inquisition and stuff, which I think is part of what made the original Black Panther so strong is having those ties to like African American culture and slavery, and like having Killmonger be such a strong villain because of that.
Yeah.
Namor has the same strengths because they're pulling from like real world trauma that these people have gone through. And I think having it be the same character from the comics would have completely like undermined any of that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. It was a bold move to just make basically a different character with the same powers. But I think they did a good job. I was going to say,
they kept his little wings though.
They did keep his little wings.
His little feet wings.
Yeah.
Totally. And like, my dream of these movies is always the what could have beens, and I think if there wasn't that tie of needing to kind of mourn, I would have loved a movie that centered on Namor and had Wakanda as the bad guy, like to have that, like flip it on its head and make the sequel to Black Panther be their side of the story, and it's kind of like, because it's the same thing would happen. You would still have the moral questions of.
Can you imagine T'Challa actually like having to have that conversation after he's just dealt with all the Killmonger stuff?
Totally.
And then having to have this conversation of like,
yeah,
oh yeah, he was right.
Yeah. Like, it would be amazing. Like it is so sad.
They kind of touch on that stuff with Shuri, but it doesn't have the same impact because it's still so they're still so focused on the grieving aspect.
Totally. And how do we feel? Because obviously Shuri wasn't positioned to be a Panther. Obviously in the comics it happens, and maybe at some point in the future of these movies it would go there, but this film has to drive that to the point. It's where this film was headed. I never really had a tie to Shuri. There was a lot of fun like moments with her as a character throughout the movies, but we really never had downtime with her character, so she never really felt like a presence. So this film had a lot of work to do, and to be honest, I think they got there. I still don't know how I feel about her as the Panther. I don't know how that'll grow as it goes on. I think the film does a good thing by having a moral question, by having the Killmonger talk. It's a nice element to kind of spice up that portrayal. But it's an interesting choice, and they have to rush to it. And for me, I think the third act is, or what feels like the fifth act, because this film ends a few times. But the third act, I think, is the film's weakest, which is it's an MCU trope. But Shuri, do we land where do we feel like the film landed well with that character? Josh, did you fall in love with Shuri by the end of this?
Maybe not in love with Shuri.
Yeah,
but
the film doesn't want you to be by the end though, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Which is cool to kind of have that as a
totally.
Yeah.
Like with all of the controversy that Letitia Wright had during the filming of this over COVID and some of her, strong beliefs. I think despite all of that, I think she did quite well in this film. I think she was quite a strong character. Came through really well. Led the film in a way quite well. I think she was quite interesting. I don't know if I see her still as the Panther going forward. I don't know exactly how they're gonna do that. Especially with what M'Baku does at the end. I'm like, well, are they gonna go towards a different god now? And have him as the hero and stuff of Wakanda. But yeah, I thought she did, pretty darn well considering all the controversy that went around, and we were discussing it and we're like, we just don't feel like, a lot of people were like, just don't feel like she's, got enough to lead a film. I think for the most part, she did that quite well. And there's clear conflict that you could see and feel through it. Like not amazing all the time. Felt a little bit, what do you call it? Like tropey, I guess, from time to time. You're like, all right. But still, despite all of that, I think like overcoming it towards the end where she just wanted to murder and then she refrains, which is tropey as hell. But she did it.
And she got the jab by the end of it. Namor ended up giving her the jab, which is
that's
nice.
Right.
in a roundabout way.
That's true.
Yeah. I thought about that this morning and it made me laugh. The other element, which I was going to bring up to you, Josh, is when we meet, and we'll talk about her in a sec, when we meet Riri, there's a moment where she like has combat with Okoye and Shuri, and she picks up something, and Okoye says to Riri, "Are you really going to fight no more with a heater?" Fun. What ends up happening?
Oh, holy
pretty
crap.
good. Which is very fun.
That's very good.
But yes, yeah, totally. I think
Nice.
When the film remembers that she's the protagonist, and because she kind of needs to be, I think it works. There's a lot of time where you forget she's there, which is not great for a film where she's the lead. But yeah, totally by the end of it, I think they find a place for it.
She's a great actress, and she does a very good job with what she's given. I think, again, her character falls down to being in a position she wasn't set up to be in. And I think that's the biggest part where it fell flat for me. It's just...
It's a turn.
I don't think this character has had the journey to be the Black Panther. And even when she, decides in the film, I need to, become the Black Panther, I'm like, but how did you come to that? I don't see that. Your mum dying? I don't feel like that.
And because I think it's a thing of we expected it to happen, so we let it happen. But man, that's what I mean by the third act. It's like once mum's dead, the film changes entirely. Suddenly she wants to be the Panther. Suddenly they're like, we need to take it to him. We need it. And it was like, wait, whoa. What's happening now? Sev, you're nodding along.
No, yeah, that. Because, just as you were talking, that was the main thing for me that really just stood out. It was this thing where once the queen dies and she's lost her mum, she's lost her brother, she realizes that she's essentially alone. It's that's when she's like, okay, I'm going to start to recreate the herb and become the Panther.
Yeah.
It was so jarring because it literally just cuts to her in her lab making the herb, and I was like,
yeah.
Oh, what's she doing? And then she tries it, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess it's happening now. And I think, like what you said, it's that thing where because we know it's happening, we kind of just let it. But I think a way more natural version of this film would have been where if her mum very early on was like, Shuri, this now falls to you. This is something that you should do for our people, for yourself, for him, and carry on his, reign as the Panther or whatever. And then I think it would have been cool if as these bad things are happening throughout the movie, the pressure is just gaining more and more on Shuri to become the Panther.
Yeah.
And then it's once her mum dies, she's like, okay, that's it. Now, just have a natural thing of the idea is a seed and it grows and grows and grows throughout the movie until it becomes what it is.
Totally.
But yeah, and
that's crazy you mentioned that, because I just realized it's definitely her mum kind of says it, but she never outright says you should become the Black Panther. She's just kind of loosely leading to that kind of conversation.
And
but
then she dies.
But then it's she never actually says it. So it's that's probably that. You're right. That's definitely probably part of the reason why it feels so odd.
Queen Ramonda throughout the film is very protective of Shuri and doesn't want too much harm.
Yes.
And totally. But I think you're right that there is a moment somewhere in the movie which is, you need to do the thing, even though she doesn't want her to. She totally needs to have that moment with her. That's a good point.
Yeah.
No, I will just add, in terms of Shuri as a character, for me, she hasn't quite hit home yet. Same with you, Will. I wasn't really set on her from the first film. She had decent moments, but it wasn't anything where I was I wasn't going into this film for her. It was I was just going as an MCU film, and you need to watch the MCU films. But the moments that stuck out for me of her character was obviously you've got the part at the beginning where she's trying to recreate the herb to save her brother, and then that fails, and then later, years later, she's then able to create it, and there's that big emotional moment of I think it was probably one of my favorite moments in the film where her emotions just get the better of it. You can see her realizing that she was able to do this, but she wasn't fast enough and wasn't smart enough at the time to be able to do it. And that's why he died. And it's it was a big moment for me where I was like, oh, that's a bit sad. And it was it really hit home. But I mean, and my other main thing about the movie is that I really wish at the beginning because at the beginning when they're like, he's, you know, his heart rate is this and like having everyone like run around, I was like, holy shit. I was like shocked. I was like, this is insane. And then I was like, oh, cool. Now we'll find out what that was.
Yeah.
And then nothing ever happened. So
happened.
that was like one of my main gripes of the movie. But
yeah, totally.
I guess like you were saying, Ben, it is kind of left open to you sort of just thinking it is what you want it to be. And because I think, and it's like what you were saying, like I think after having Thor Love and Thunder, it would have been a really like confronting thing mentioning cancer again. Because even in Thor, I was like you're watching it and then cancer comes up and you're like, oh, yeah, well, that's sad and depressing.
Yeah,
and like I think just because it is such a harsh thing,
it's a real thing,
in our world, and then I think to do that twice in two films that are one after the other, I would have been like, oh, so is cancer now the new bad guy in the MCU?
It's the new Thanos.
Isn't there a cancer? No, that's DC. There's like a cancer zone somewhere.
Oh God. Oh wow.
I think there is in one of them.
I mean, look, that sounds like more of a DC thing. That sounds pretty sad. Yeah, and I guess that is a good point. And we should leave it. But it's like no. It's totally something in Doctor Who. It always happens. Like they're like, I've got cancer, and he's like, oh well, let me give you a lollipop, and it's like, what the fuck, man? That's dark. So it's like in this, it's like if it had actually been cancer, and she basically solved cancer, it would have probably.
No, it's Marvel.
It's Marvel has the cancer zone? There you go.
The Cancerverse.
The Cancerverse. Oh, what? Verse. Now you put verse there, it sounds familiar. Yeah, Cancerverse.
Yeah.
If they had solved cancer in this movie, it could have, left a sour taste. So maybe
100%.
leaving that as the thing is a good idea.
Yeah.
Now, Beat, because I don't want that to be related to the character I want to talk about next, because she's wonderful. Yeah. Beat. Riri Williams introduced in this film and is a wonderful addition. I got to throw it straight to Josh as Iron Man resident. He's in the chair. What did you feel? How'd you feel? There it is.
Loved it. Like she's so much fun. She's really she's great. It was cool seeing the first iteration of her suit.
Such a good suit.
So sick. So cool. The later one, it was cool to see like another suit, but man, it was bubbly.
To be clear, we're talking about like the home built suit.
Yes.
Yeah.
The home built suit.
Yeah. The other one, I don't know what the hell that was.
It was horrible.
Like it was jelly bean.
Jelly bean.
Pretty much. It's so bubbly and red.
Yeah. Guys, did you know it makes the shape of a heart? Really obviously.
Oh, yeah, of course. From all those frames that they let us see.
Yeah,
Jesus.
And like her suit had the frame of the heart in her little arc reactor.
She made it,
but they didn't have it in the other suit. I didn't want that to be a heart. I just wanted the arc reactor part to be a heart, not the whole freaking suit. Anyway, fine. But yeah, she was so much fun. I feel like just the initial interaction in her dorm room.
Just so many windows.
Captured everybody. There was so much fun with it, and her just being like, "All right, I'm just going to go to the bathroom first," and then who was in there? Okoye?
It was Okoye,
yeah. Comes out and just scares the crap out of her. Like that whole interaction is fantastic. Going to the warehouse, having the chat there, them just being like, looking at all the stuff, and her kind of discussing her past and everything like that. Oh, it's so fun. So I'm so keen to see more of her.
Yeah.
In coming, movies and shows and stuff.
Yeah. I was kind of saying that like her introduction in this film, and like take it or leave it, she becomes MacGuffin, the thing that people are kind of after and stuff like that. So beyond that first interaction, she is kind of thrown into the background a bit and doesn't really have another moment, but whatever. I wish that Kamala had a moment like this, because I think that this warmed me to her character, and that I'm very excited to see her show now in a way that I have lots of problems with the Miss Marvel show, but I think that, I don't know, this was a nice introduction to a character to then enjoy and expand in media, which has kind of been the way of like the Hawkeye show and like the WandaVision and stuff. It's like you find the character in a movie and get to have their expanded story. And it's also nice because the show assumedly will just have her doing her stuff. It'll avoid the origin story because we've kind of had that now. So I liked her inclusion in this. I don't think it'll work for every character, but I mean, similarly, Namor might go on to have a series or a fun special or something, and it was nice to have him in the movie. I think that is a nicer path than like character you've never seen before, except this. And so I quite liked it.
I really hope they double down on the vibes of those first couple scenes in Boston.
Yeah,
it was in Boston, right? Yeah. With her, like, because that's
same uni as MJ and Ned, so they won't be in it because they're part of the Sony universe.
Yeah, that's where like the character shines, and that's where like you see her acting chops as well.
Yeah,
and it feels the most natural. As soon as she's taken to Wakanda, she is not.
Yeah.
Like, she's so clearly out of the Wakandan world, but it is not in a, like, good and interesting way. Like, this is a foreigner in their world. It's like, no, you just don't belong
fit here. Sorry.
Yeah. Like, that's not her fault. I think, if anything, it's the writing beyond that point is very, very poor for the character. So I really hope, and I assume would be the case, that especially with her giving away the suit at the end of the film, that when it comes to her show, it is focused. It's a more like grassroots level show, and I think that will be really interesting.
No, yeah, I will just say very quickly, I think the thing that I liked most about her character being in this movie was that her, like, just having her in it just felt natural. Like, there's a lot of times in movies and shows where characters will come in and it's just so jarring and just so in your face, and it's like, it's totally you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
I think having her in this film, it reminded me a lot of having Spider-Man in Civil War.
Totally.
So I think that's why I kind of settled a lot easier with her being in it, because it wasn't like pushed or forced. The amount of screen time she had, I thought, was like pretty decent. Again, in like the last act, I was a bit kind of like, let's get a bit messy here. But pretty much for what we saw of her in the uni up until she does go to, I don't know, I would say some of the stuff while she's there is okay, but it's just in that last act. It just got messy. But,
there's a few scenes where she's like there, and it's just like she'll just be in the frame, and it's like,
totally,
she is.
She's saying a line, and you can't repeat the line because it's the most generic stuff you've ever heard. But it's like, but I think when she's in like the lab with Shuri, it's like still very good and stuff.
Like she just like has got like these really cool moments. So I'm keen to see what they do with her in like her series and stuff. But I would say she was definitely one of the highlights of this. And I'm just glad that it worked out and it wasn't just like shoehorned in.
Totally. Yeah, no, she's really fun, and like such a scene stealer. Like, she's got such a fucking great energy, so it'll be really exciting to see.
I also just loved hearing like when those guys were raiding her garage. You see this one guy, she got an Iron Man suit.
Totally. It's such an in-universe Ben smells to the ground. Well, it's exciting. It's totally, they're building up the Iron Man verse. They've got Armor Wars coming and stuff, so it's going to be interesting to see. I guess the other element is, there was something I was going to talk about. I mean, I think for me, the highlight, the standout character of the whole film, and my least favorite plot point, possibly, is Queen Ramonda, the Queen. Basically, I think I can't think of another performance in the MCU that is so fucking intense and so raw. Again, they've got a good lead, a terrible lead, but a good lead to be able to put these performances. And for better or worse, it is such an incredible film to see people grieving. And her performance, it like genuinely, she is mourning her son and is doing it the entire film. Every conversation she has with anyone is like, oh fuck, you're sad. Like, you are so sad all the time. And for me, the plot point, which I hate, and I think that, as we've said, it is the catalyst for kind of the worst act of the movie. Her death is like incredible setup, incredible like visual of it all, and you know, incredibly unique in the MCU. But it just when it happens, I was just like, oh, like, why?
It was also just very sudden as well, because you see her saving Riri from the water. I think it was her, wasn't it?
Well, no, they save Riri and her, and she doesn't make it because both of them are there.
But like,
because that's another scene where Riri's just there.
Because like my thing is like, you see her helping her up to the surface of the water, and she's fine, and then when they come to us, she's just drowned.
She's dead.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's a bit sudden. But no, look, I will like, she was a great character. Like, definitely, I would say her standout moment was when they go to the courtroom and she's having a big speech. I thought that was great. I also loved hearing that the other nations were like, okay, this is the time to attack them for their like what they have, because they haven't got a king, they haven't got a panther. I thought that was all really interesting, and I think hearing that come from her as a leader of a nation, and like she's so aware of what the world is trying to do to them and what they're trying to get, I just thought was really cool.
Yeah, totally.
And just the whole vibe of that was great. So very good.
Yeah, intense performance. But yeah, I just feel like we lost so much of the universe in this movie, and it's like I just didn't need to lose her, and not in like it didn't feel like, obviously it leads her to become the Black Panther, but that also feels so sudden that it doesn't like it doesn't feel like the emotional pivot that it needed to be. It's just like, oh, she's just not here now.
Feels like a hangover from what the original film was. Again, we won't know what the original film was.
That's a good point.
Ever. But it's like, it feels like that was a plot point in that. And then
they'd already rendered the animation, and they were like, well,
but it's like, to me, if like clearly this film would have had to go through extensive rewrites and basically retooling the plot to make it work. And it's like, at that point, I mean, I guess if like you've already said she's gonna die, like maybe there's like contractual stuff. Yeah. That you can be like, this is your final film. I don't know. But it's this weird thing of like, in my head, I'm like, well, okay, if T'Challa was still alive, the mum dies, and that's the thing for T'Challa and Shuri to be like,
what do we do?
Well, what do we do? But also the old generation is dead. Let's kind of like bring Wakanda into the world we want it to be, because that's the one. I could see it where like that was the one hang up of Wakanda truly going to help the world, was still having their mum alive, like preventing them from properly like helping other people. Yep. Whereas in this is kind of like,
what did that change?
Oh, the mum's dead. Everyone's dead. I mean, you've still gone through a like ridiculous amount of trauma. To me, as Sam said earlier, the mum, like if it had equally been Ramonda being like slowly coming to terms over the film of like letting Shuri go and then being like, you need to be the Black Panther, and not dying, but kind of taking a step back and just not like being at the forefront of the film anymore. I think that would have had an equal impact. And her dying almost just like and it takes such a position in the film that it doesn't need to.
Yeah, well, and it's also the thing that the movie does at the start with the silent montage of Chadwick Boseman, and at the end, and we talked about it, Josh, redoing it takes away the impact of it. Like it's like, oh, we're doing it again. And I think the funeral is the same thing. It's like almost having a play-by-play of the same events taking place. It's really hard to be affected by that, because it's like, well, I guess this is as sad for them as T'Challa passing, but we've seen this already,
because we've like T'Challa passing actually is a real world thing. Yeah. Whereas like for us, Queen Ramonda passing is like, oh, this is a plot point.
And look, T'Challa going is the only emotional hook you need in this movie. Like you don't need to do it again. But I'm just sad we won't get her in more movies unless another Panther happens and then they go to the spirit world and then they get to talk to Queen Ramonda. That's the only way
She just has the best speeches in the MCU. Like, she's so
Angela Bassett is just phenomenal. Like, she,
oh my God,
and literally strong. She is.
Yeah.
No wonder she could lift Riri up to that water.
True.
That's also, with all due respect, that's also why it's kind of unbelievable that she just drowns.
Yeah, you've already done that. Yeah, totally. Weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's much else. I mean, the other big moment in this film is, of course, comes in the mid-credit scene when we find out more. Also, I should just say, I hate how Nakia is treated in both of these movies. I don't know why they keep doing a, like, she's over here. Hey, there she is. Do you want to help? And she's like, yeah, I'll think about it. And then she does, and then she doesn't do anything else because it's Lupita, isn't it? Yeah. Yes. Like she's phenomenal. Like every scene she's in is amazing, but the character is just so mistreated in everything because she doesn't pop up in anything but these two movies. Maybe that's a contractual
thing. She's supposed to be this cool like Wakandan, like she's supposed to be like a full on like spy who like infiltrates foreign governments and stuff.
Yeah, and she's always in like 6 scenes per movie. It's like,
why isn't she going on?
Yeah, well, because that was the fucking scene when when she remakes the herb and she's standing in the room. I'm like, oh, see, that would be cool.
I would love if she became the Panther. I would love it because like she is great.
And she just grabs it and just like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Take over.
Yeah. Oh, just the other thing on Shuri being the Panther that I want to mention that's less to do with plot, but also it's the fact that when they animate Shuri in the Panther suit, it's not distinct enough from the way they animated T'Challa in the Panther suit. Mm-hmm. And I think the way you make Shuri as a Panther believable is having her move and act completely differently to how T'Challa does, because she works with her intelligence and the fact that she built the suit and she knows all the parts of that.
We're not seeing a fight like that as well.
Yeah. And so like actually having her utilize those elements of the suit rather than just kind of like flipping around and stuff like Black Panther suit.
She just flips. Yeah. That's all she does.
Like she's never been trained in combat, from what we know.
Like she would have something. Yeah. Like being growing up in the Wakandan environment. But we've not seen it.
He is a warrior. From the start, he has been a warrior and she's been the science person.
Yeah. And that's not to say she can't be, but I just think a more intelligent use of and like choreography of how she fights in that final scene would have been interesting. Like, sure, she like taps the thing and it explodes, but that's like the least interesting way of doing that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, the other element with her, which I quite like, is that by the end of this film, she is moving like T'Challa. Like, she does kind of hold herself in the same way Chadwick Boseman did as the Black Panther, which is really interesting. I think, again, it comes out of fucking nowhere, but in terms of a performance, like when she goes to Nakia at the end of this, I'm getting all the names. There's so many fucking names in this movie. When she goes to her at the end of the movie and she gets, and she's basically wearing his kind of duds as well. Like she really does feel like she's growing into the role that Chadwick Boseman has left. And as much as it is a heel turn, it's one of those ones with so much of the MCU that I'm like, oh, next time I'm going to like this. Like, next time you're just going to be this, and I won't have to have gone on the journey of you getting here. And I think that this will be cool because, I as much as M'Baku, who we could just have talked about this whole podcast, is now king, seemingly, unless someone fights him and is better than him. Because that really leaves on a weird end of like, well, what if someone just what happens in this scene if someone beats him?
What happens if Namor shows up and beats him? Theoretically, by their law, he'd
be king. Yeah.
Oh, no, they have to be born there or something. But anyway, it's funny. Yeah.
I was actually also really like in that scene when he comes out of the ship and he's like, I'm here to make the challenge for king. I was like, is he going to fight Shuri?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
If he does, she's gone. Like, there's no chance.
He just wanted, she just didn't want to do it anymore. She's like, let's throw this.
I know that we're trying to wrap up, but I just want to mention two things that I really liked in the movie. One was Namor's mention of mutants. I think that's the first time we've heard that in the MCU, so that's pretty cool.
Totally.
I think.
Barring Kamala. Kamala
Kamala's was so much more obvious though, and had a
actual audio.
But so there was that, and then I also really enjoyed that when Shuri took the herb, the person she saw was Killmonger. That was a big surprise. That was really cool. It was really cool for me to see Michael B. Jordan back in the role, and he's just like. It's like he never left.
Yeah,
it's like he's been sitting there for the last few years just waiting for that scene to be shot.
Will and I were talking when we left the cinema about how he's one of those actors that kind of just plays the same guy, but he does it like so phenomenally well.
Yeah.
And it's like the same guy, but very different motivations each time. Yeah. And he's just got such charisma that I was like, I know you can't be in every scene, but I want you to be in every scene.
Totally. Oh, he's so good. I wonder if this was CGI. I wonder if because like they didn't need to do all the makeup this time. Like, I wonder if they just did a CGI bod. I wonder if there's a comp somewhere of just a floating head on top of a bod.
Speaking of, someone sitting on a throne and having a CGI body and face, freaking Namor's speech underwater.
Yeah.
That was abysmal. It looked awful. It was so bad.
He's such a floaty boy.
It's crazy because the underwater effects for most of it were pretty good.
Yeah,
great.
And then that was just
why did they need
real bad?
Why did they need to have an entire CGI?
He was just a CGI man.
There was a scene as well where it was M'Baku and like three other guys are standing on a platform and you can see like the whole city behind them and it's like blurred.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it and I was like, oh, that was terrible. And then in like the bottom corner, in the bottom right corner, up against like one of the guy's legs. It's the most like botched, just like blurred out. It's like they saw that at the last minute and they were like, we'll just
Oh, shit.
blur it.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just like, holy shit.
A lot of the their attack on Wakanda looked pretty freaking rough. Like, thankfully the Ramonda scene was beautiful, but everything else was like totally like super depth of field. Like, don't look at anything but the character, please.
Yeah. I'm also glad that at the end that Shuri and Namor fought in daylight. And not in a dark cave where you couldn't see anything.
Yeah. They learnt from She-Hulk.
This movie was so dark.
Yeah.
The first half, like, well,
the first time we see
just
him.
the first half, but like the first 2/3 of this film is so dark. You couldn't see anything.
Because like it's mainly taken place like at night. And
every time they
like,
want to have a talk, they're like, "Come outside for a moment. Let's stand in the nighttime." Yeah, bizarre. I mean, look, CGI. There's moments of less than good. As I said, anytime anyone's flying, they're just like zipping around the sea. Like, there's never a moment of letting you have a look at it. It's like, just they're doing it.
Ironheart's suit is like,
But even with Namor with his wings, like there were shots where like they wanted to show off the wings, but it's for a split second and they cut away because they're like, no, that's too out of budget.
But
we catch the one time where they really focus on the wings.
And then she's holding them and they're flapping about.
But yeah, no, it was very funny.
There's some rough bits. Although, and unfortunately that was at night too, but the full homage of the Mark 1 or Mark 2 Iron Man flight for Riri. Like, she almost does the freezing moment. She goes straight up.
I'm surprised they didn't.
It was coming. It was definitely there.
I think it's because they saved that for the moment where she's in a white singlet and she's hammering a piece of metal.
Yeah, that's
same as in Iron Man 1.
That's the real homage. Singlets and metal. And then I guess the last thing that we should touch on is, of course, the big reveal in the mid credits, which is kind of something that had been assumed or theorized, which is that Nakia and T'Challa had a kid off screen at some point in time, not during the blip. So the kid is old. All he does is smile, but he's very cute. And also,
did Nakia get blipped, but the kid didn't?
Yeah. So Dad got blipped, but the kid didn't, so that we could age him up a little bit.
No, like Nakia as well. Did he just not have a mum?
Oh yeah, imagine.
I don't know.
I guess you set up the school during the blip. Maybe that's what happened.
That's true.
But very exciting. And of course,
she did talk about in the film like losing him quickly from the blip.
And it's straight after the blip. Which is the most fucked thing about like in universe. What a rough couple of years for people. But yeah, I liked it. I liked that they he's named T'Challa very clearly. Post Secret Wars, the universe will be very different, and I think that we will have a new T'Challa in the main universe. It's a very obvious choice. Yeah, and I think that's
because he was lovely.
Yeah, he was What, you want him in the Panther suit?
100%. He was great. In all seriousness, though, like I just loved like how like happy he was, but. It was like I was very I cried during that scene just because I was like I think it was just like knowing the real world effects of this plus like what everyone had been through and then also what the characters have been through.
Totally.
It was like it all just hit me at once. I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, I didn't hear many sniffles, but after that scene cuts, I definitely heard sniffles in the cinema. There was a little which was very sweet. But yeah, I like it. I think that as someone that was kind of championing the recast and move on, I think that this is a nice way to do that. I appreciate that they aren't like, obviously the character will be very different, but I guess we don't really have much ties now. Like, the character of T'Challa has lost his mum, dad. There's nothing there for that character. So when we get so when we get a new T'Challa, there's nothing that he needs to be but the name and the Panther. So it's like they've definitely got a reboot planned for the character in the future.
How quickly can they accelerate time? Can they do another blip?
Yeah.
How quickly can this kid age up is the question.
The Secret Wars, once all the universe resets, it's 2062 or something. Like, they've just got to make...
say the year well.
Yeah. We're just in the future now. It'll be interesting to see. But I think it's an interesting movie. I think it's an exhausting movie in a lot of ways, emotionally, and just in terms of how much happens. We kind of talked about it. I can't really imagine seeing it again. Definitely not in the movies. Even in like a full rewatch, I just feel like the pieces are being placed to do the next thing that I can just watch the next thing. Like this is such an interlude movie that it's like I'm glad it happened, but the next thing's going to be more exciting. Yeah.
I think there are scenes I would rewatch. Like I think I would actually do like a super cut of this film where I just fast forward through some bits. Like I would. Yeah, Will's gonna do it.
I'll cut out everything.
I would rewatch, like, we didn't even mention it, but the Lake Bell scene on the boat at the start where they're all like walking off the side because of siren songs, which is terrifying, but like really well shot. Totally. Like there's so many, like there's really strong scenes, even when they're going through Telecom, like Shuri and Namor and stuff, like scenes like that I would rewatch. But yeah, there's enough that in it that it would be like I'm loosely watching this and then, I should notice I skip through this bit till I get to a good bit. Yeah.
For sure.
The only other thing I want to really quickly shout out that we also haven't mentioned is, doesn't need to be gone into much because we know he's fantastic, but Ludwig Göransson just did a phenomenal job with the score again. And also like pulling on so many themes from the original Black Panther. Like, I'm not the theme guy. Will and Sam as well, like a bit more like into that stuff, but the first Black Panther film was so iconic in that music that like I know the themes from that and pulling them into this film, like every time when they have the it's the Dora Milaje one, I think specifically, where it's like the chuk chuk chuk. That one gives me chills every time. Cool, man. Especially when they're like fighting off the like invaders and the French people. And they're just coming out of the dark and that's in the background. It's just so good. He's like,
they all walk into the courtroom.
Trying
to ambush him.
He is. He's the best like composer in the game at the moment, and I don't think there's really much more to say on that. He's just so good.
No fun. I mean, very very quickly. Speaking of Okoye, we Okoye and the other character who's in Falcon Winter Soldier, but I can't remember. But the two of them.
No, not Annika.
No, that's not. I can't remember.
Well, is it Annika or Ayo? One of them, because in the comics it's Ayo and Annika.
I think but in the movie they're going Okoye. I think it might be Ayo because it's not the new actress they've got in, but it's the one that's kind of been around. The two of them get themselves in costumes in a comic cast near you. You may see that
soon.
We soon that we may nail that, and we may have let out a little shriek in the cinema when they showed the costumes of the Midnight Angels. Is that what they're?
Yeah.
It's Annika.
Midnight Angels.
Midnight Angels. And
Annika, okay.
Annika, yeah. That is going to be a show. Undoubtedly, that is a show starring the two of them and Martin Freeman. It's coming. Like,
is that the Wakanda show, do you think?
Well, apparently there's multiple Wakanda shows coming. Apparently that's the thing, which is like, okay, sure. I guess
see about that.
Yeah, this film kind of does a lot to set up the universe, the world of Wakanda again, so I wouldn't be surprised, like, a couple of 5-episode series or something would be fun.
Yeah.
But
not another fiver.
Another fiver. It's okay, but long and shot by Ryan Coogler. Okay. That's important.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, just quickly, I think that because there was kind of a campaign of Coogler taking one of the two Avengers films. One of them's been taken, the other one hasn't. I could see that now. Just as much as I think there's a lot going on in this film, and maybe it's a little messy. I think that he could, in a similar way to the Russos, handle that and like. The kind of the broader, and obviously there's big tonal shifts when we go to America compared to Wakanda, but I could see him doing that, and I could see him with a huge budget that those films will have doing a lot with that and making some incredible visuals, because when this dude, when a shot works, when they don't work, unfortunately it's the VFX team, and that's because Marvel's a bitch, but when it works, he's made some of the most impressive visuals in the MCU, so
like when Namor punches M'Baku and it goes into slow motion and the close up and you see all the snow coming off him and everything.
Totally.
The water. Yeah. But like that's a good point. And I think he'd be good in Avengers because I think by then there wouldn't necessarily need to be any characters you need to introduce, work on, like flush out in a single movie. It'll just be focusing on the plot and what's happening. So I think in terms of that, I think he'd do really well.
It'd be really exciting. And Ludwig, get him back. I want to see like Ludwig's take on every hero's theme. Whatever you fucking say.
Get him to every film.
Yeah. Oh god, yeah. I mean, he's doing
overwork him to death.
Yeah, he's only got Mandalorian to do and probably another season of Book of Boba Fett. He's got nothing going on. But I think that's all our thoughts on Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. This seems pretty thoughted. If you want to hear more Black Panther things, there will be a comic cast coming up shortly. Ben says the word shortly.
Soon. Hashtag soon. It's one of
soon.
those soon TM kind of things.
And it's a fun one. It's one of our best, I think. It's really, really fun.
Yeah, no, it was really good. I'm excited to get that out to you guys. And yeah, we'll be like so much like, oh man, this is going to be in the movie and it's going to be great. And it was.
We fucking nailed it. We really nailed this one.
Once again.
We're very good at this. And Sam is very good at making art. Where can they find that art, Sam?
Oh, thanks, mate. They can find me on Instagram at Sam's Studio AU. I just post some fan art every now and then. So yeah, go check it out if you want.
Check that stuff out. And if you want to find us, you can find us on Twitch at twitch.tv/ettonline. YouTube, if you're not seeing our faces currently, at youtube.com/each to their own. If you don't want to see these fucking things, you can go to any audio platform and just type in ETTO. ETTO's Catch Up is where all our podcasts live. And if you want to give us money, you can go to patreon.com/each to their own. $3, get into a super secret Discord where people have been talking about this movie for weeks. You could have been chatting to people about this ages ago.
I know.
So, it's all fun in the ETTO house. That felt like
4 different houses.
4 different houses. 4 different boxes now.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the whole podcast, right?
That's the thing.
I'm Will.
I'm Josh.
I'm Sam.
I'm Ben.
Here we strip the power.